Hey there, this is Tom with a daily walk, ourwalkinchrist.com. So today I actually want to talk about progressivism and Christianity. This is kind of an interesting discussion, and really what prompted it was an interesting discussion. I will get into that in a little bit. But I think where progressivism comes into play is a lot of it having to do with scientific theory. Now, I have a lot of advanced education in the field of science, and a lot of people, not everybody, not nearly to the effect as that film Expelled seemed to promote, but a lot of people nevertheless have said that science and Christianity are not necessarily compatible. And that's very funny, because the entire basis of scientific theory that scientists use stems from a philosophy called Baconian philosophy, established by Francis Bacon, a Christian. And really, if you look back over the greatest discoveries in the scientific world, every one of them, almost every one of them, I should say, were by Christians. So to say that Christianity and science is not really compatible isn't really accurate at all. And so we need to keep that in mind as we look forward to where our society is heading. And I think that that's especially important because as our society moves more and more and more on, we're starting to see more and more evidence that the gospel and God and Christ and the Bible has indeed been expelled from our world and our nature and our culture, our life, everything. And that's really a fascinating point. Not to say it was always there. Obviously, there was a period of time, obviously before the Christian Roman Empire, before Constantine, the Christianity wasn't well known or established. But over the years, as our society progressed along from that Roman time, from Constantine, when Christianity was adopted as the official, albeit not always followed, but the official faith of the Roman culture, what ended up happening is more and more and more Christianity was input into the very core of our culture as a whole. And that itself is a fascinating thing and a fascinating trend. And I think one of the things that was interesting to me, obviously, as the printing press was established. The first thing that was printed on the printing press was the King James Bible. And as all of these various technologies were established that had a lot to do with how our society progressed, it was usually at the hands of Christians and at the hands of people who took the Word of God seriously. And so something was in the news this last week that I just really wanted to comment on. But before I do, I want to give a few examples. Obviously, I already talked about Baconian philosophy. All right, hitting into the woods, so I should be a little bit more front-led again. Francis Bacon established what we know as our scientific theory. Everything that we do in science comes from that man and what he has established. And then, of course, I mentioned the printing press. The Bible was the first thing printed on the printing press. And then you had hospitals, they were established by Christianity. Universities, they were established by Christianity. All of these things, if you go to some of the major universities in our country today, you will see praises to God inscribed on the walls of these universities that has since been taken over by progressivism. And what you will start to see, even in monuments, in statues across our country, if you go around and you look at what is out and about in the world, you will see references and praises to God all over our world, if we just get out of our daily lives and go hunt for them. So what I saw in the news this week was a fascinating piece of research that has been going through the field of science. Of course, data storage. And it was data storage is being tested and tried and pushed to the very limits. The latest place where people are looking to store data is actually inside of DNA. So we can't store much there right now. But the capabilities, the possibilities of what could be stored on DNA is absolutely incredible. And so I really think that the scientists are onto something when they're doing this. But then when I saw the article about successfully storing, replicating, freezing, thawing, and retrieving data, for the first time in our culture, it wasn't the Bible that they had used for this mass data storage. They instead used the universal and progressive human rights documents, I believe from the European Union, but I can't recall exactly, since I don't script these talks out. Totally forgot to go look up the article again before doing this, but it was very fascinating to me. Progressivism is so taken over that if that discovery had been made 100 years ago, they would have stored the King James Bible on that string of DNA. Now we are stringing these universal human rights, which you can question positively or negatively. I've never read them. I'm not even going to comment on it. But it was very fascinating to me. We're moving away from Christianity at the very core. That's nothing new, of course. But if you'd like to see a little bit more about that decline, there was a fascinating documentary that was released, I don't know, a couple years ago. I forget exactly when, and I forget exactly who wrote it. But it was called Decadence, the Decline of the Western Civilization. I'd go check that out if you can find a copy of it. Very, very fascinating. Fascinating documentary on the steady decline of the Judeo-Christian ethics inside of our culture. So that's really what I want to talk about today. Progressivism. It's really taken over. A discovery that made today, suppose the printing press was made today, it'd be these human rights documents and declarations rather than the Bible. And we have to ask, is that the culture, is that the society that we really want to be part of? And I think each person has to answer that question for themselves. So this has been Tom with The Daily Walk, ourwalkinchrist.com.